March 26, 2026. In an interview with Reuters on Monday, Singapore's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, put in bald language the change in the world order instigated by President Donald J. Trump. For 80 years, Balakrishnan explained, the U.S. was the underwriter for a system of globalization based on UN Charter principles, multilateralism, territorial integrity, sovereign equality. That system heralded an unprecedented and unique period of global prosperity and peace. Of course, there were exceptions, and of course, the Cold War was still in effect for at least half of the last 80 years. But generally, for those of us who were non-communists, who ran open economies, who provided first world infrastructure, together with a hardworking, disciplined people, we had unprecedented opportunities. The story of Singapore, with a per capita GDP of $500 in 1965, now it is somewhere between $80,000 to $90,000. It would not have happened if it had not been for this unprecedented period, basically Pax Americana, and then turbocharged by the reform and opening of China for decades. It has been unprecedented. It has been great for many of us. In fact, I will say for all of us, if you look back 80 years. But now, whether you like it or not, objectively, this period has ended. Basically, the underwriter of this world order has now become a revisionist power, and some people would even say a disruptor. But the larger point is that the erosion of norms, processes, and institutions that underpinned a remarkable period of peace and prosperity, that foundation has gone. In its place, a scholar of authoritarianism, Timothy Snyder, said to me in a YouTube conversation yesterday, Trump is aligning himself with international oligarchs like Russia's Vladimir Putin, Hungary's Viktor Orban, Saudi Arabia's Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, and China's Xi Jinping. Because of his position as President of the United States of America, this means he is aligning the United States of America with this oligarchical axis as well, abandoning the country's democratic principles and traditional allies. On February 28th, Michael Birnbaum, John Hudson, Karen DeYoung, Natalie Allison, and Suad McKennett of The Washington Post reported that Trump initially launched the strikes on Iran at the urging of MBS and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, despite the assessment of U.S. intelligence that Iran did not pose an imminent threat to the U.S. and would not for at least a decade. Both countries see Iran as a threat to their power and want it weakened. Netanyahu has been eager to get rid of the Iranian regime for decades and has urged previous presidents to attack without success. On Tuesday, March 24th, Julian E. Barnes, Tyler Pager, and Eric Schmidt of the New York Times reported that MBS sees a historic opportunity to remake the Middle East and so has been pushing Trump to continue his war against Iran. MBS, the journalists report, has urged Trump to use troops to seize Iran's energy infrastructure and drive the regime out of power. He has assured Trump that the jump in oil prices will be temporary, although most observers disagree. Judd Legum of Popular Information notes that the Saudi Public Investment Fund, or PIF, controlled by MBS, invested $2 billion in the private equity firm of Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, one of Trump's volunteer Iran negotiators before the war. A report by Democrats on the Senate Finance Committee and House Oversight Committee, released on March 19th, says that since 2021, Mr. Kushner has collected more than $110 million from the government of Saudi Arabia for investment management services that have reaped little to no return. The fallout from the Iran war has also benefited Russia's Vladimir Putin. Despite reports that Russia is aiding Iran in the fight, the Trump administration dropped sanctions on Russian oil that was already at sea, giving Russia an injection of up to $10 billion a month into its cash-strapped war effort against Ukraine. Today, Trump reposted Russian propaganda claiming that Ukraine discussed funneling money to Biden's re-election campaign. Also today, 4 Russian lawmakers arrived in Washington, D.C. for the first such visit since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022 to talk with lawmakers and officials, part of the normalization of relations with the United States of America, as one of the Russians told the Russian press. Trump declared he was determined to achieve peace between Russia and Ukraine, but this week, according to Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, administration officials said the U.S. would not guarantee Ukraine's security unless Ukraine withdraws from its own land in Donbass. Ceding the region to Russia would essentially give Putin what he launched the war to grab. It's the same region that was at stake in 2016 when Russian operatives told Trump's 2016 campaign manager they would help Trump's presidential candidacy if he would look the other way as Putin installed a puppet over the region. This afternoon, Noah Robertson and Ellen Francis of the Washington Post reported that the Pentagon is considering diverting weapons intended for Ukraine to the Middle East. They also noted that on Monday, Pentagon officials told Congress that it was going to divert about $750 million in funding provided by NATO countries for Ukraine to restock military weapons in the U.S. instead. About allocating weapons, Trump told the reporters, "We do that all the time. We have them in other countries, like in Germany and all over Europe. Sometimes we take from one and we use for another." Last week, the U.S. eased sanctions on banks in Russia's ally Belarus, and today Trump announced he would ease further sanctions on Belarus to try to get fertilizer into the U.S. since Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz has stopped the transportation of about 20% of the world's fertilizer. Also today, Belarus's president, Alexander Lukashenko, signed a treaty with another of Putin's allies, North Korea's President Kim Jong-un, announcing a fundamentally new stage of the relationship between the two countries as they oppose undue pressure on Belarus from the West. Both Belarus and North Korea support Russia in its war on Ukraine. Trump has openly endorsed Orbán for re-election in Hungary's April 12th elections, posting on social media yesterday, "Relations between Hungary and the United States have reached new heights of cooperation and spectacular achievement under my administration, thanks largely to Prime Minister Orbán. I look forward to continuing working closely with him so that both of our countries can further advance this tremendous path to success and cooperation." Urging Hungarians to vote for Orbán, Trump continued, "He is a true friend, fighter, and winner, and has my complete and total endorsement. I am with him all the way." The framers of the Constitution tried to set up a system that would make it impossible for a president to go to war for private interests or the benefit of other countries, establishing that Congress alone can declare war. The framers wanted the American people to weigh in on whether they wanted to dedicate their lives and their fortunes to a war. But Trump simply began the Iran war without consultation with Congress, and administration officials have refused to appear at hearings, instead briefing Congress behind closed doors. At an annual fundraising dinner for Republican members of Congress, Trump appeared to acknowledge he was violating the Constitution. He spoke of the tremendous success of what he called his military operation in Iran. He continued, "I won't use the word war because they say if you use the word war, that's maybe not a good thing to do. They don't like the word war because you're supposed to get approval. So I will use the word military operation." Now, as the war costs at least $1 billion a day and Trump's declarations fluctuate wildly from saying the war is over to suggesting he is considering deploying ground troops, to posting this morning that Iranian negotiators better get serious soon before it's too late, because once that happens, there is no turning back and it won't be pretty. Even Republicans are starting to have misgivings. The war has pushed Trump's approval rating down to just 36%, while a new Reuters poll shows that only 25% of Americans approve of how Trump is handling the cost of living. Today, the stock market, which has generally trended downward since the invasion, dropped sharply as traders apparently recognize that the cost of oil is not coming down anytime soon. Yesterday, after a classified briefing, House Armed Services Committee Chair Mike Rogers, a Republican of Alabama, who backed the Iran strikes, told reporters that Congress members want to know more about what's going on, what the options are, and why they're being considered, adding, "And we're just not getting enough answers on those questions." Chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee Roger Wicker, a Republican of Mississippi, commented, "I can see why he might have said that." In an in-depth interview with Hunter Walker and Josh Kovensky of Talking Points Memo yesterday, Representative Joe Morelli, a Democrat of New York, who sits on the House Appropriations Committee, explained how Trump's Iran incursion has become a mess for the president. The administration has suggested it is going to ask for $200 billion for the war, and Morelli noted that we are already closing in on $30 billion in spending on it, and that when you consider all the things that Trump rejects or the Republicans reject as too costly, the fact that they have now spent $30 billion in effectively the span of a month without even talking to Congress about this expenditure is really somewhat staggering. Morelli noted that even if the White House or the Pentagon did start to provide specifics, I'm not sure it would matter anyway, because the president changes his mind so frequently. He might say something and literally, without exaggeration, a half hour later say something completely different, or even sometimes within the same press conference, give two wildly different answers. Morelli told Walker and Kovensky, "They fight us on things that will help American families be able to pursue dreams, take care of the food, housing, and health care needs of millions of families that they can't afford." Precisely the things that, as Minister Balakrishnan noted, the post-World War II international order enabled people around the world to attain. But, Morelli said, they can go into an ill-conceived military action that has neither the support of Congress nor the support of American families, which has no clear objectives, shifting goals, and has alienated our allies and made us less safe.
Letters from an American was written and read by Heather Cox Richardson. It was produced at Soundscape Productions, Dedham, Massachusetts. Recorded with music composed by Michael Moss.